application running around there. How are you going to help me protect that?
So right now we work with only the public cloud, so we offer the public cloud offering. The vision in the future, I think, will involve things like OpenStack and be able to deploy sort of private appliances of what we do, being able to burst from the private to the public cloud. It's sort of like too far out for us to focus on right now because we've got such a big market with just the startups, the dev shops, the growth companies, and even some enterprises where the small teams with enterprises don't want to deal with sort of heavy infrastructure. If they can work with the public cloud, then that's what we're doing right now. But we would definitely, and we're always constantly asking ourselves, what's our sort of private cloud strategy, but we don't take action on it because we're too small right now.
Do you, I mean, it's interesting the graph that you had that, showed, where you said, I mean, do you market yourself as a platform for, I mean, is that, because that's sort of
that's the closest.
How I digested it. And then, go ahead, answer that question first.
Oh no, that's the closest that we can say is that we're a platform, but we don't like to throw that word around because we love to work with the platforms to offer complementary services to what they do.
So my follow-up question is, and I haven't used your service yet, and I'm looking forward to working with you on that, but is your value proposition to the end users, listen, we'll take care of the infrastructure, right? You worry about what you need and your requirements and getting that code in, and we will make sure it powers and performs. Is that the value proposition?
Yes. We don't think developers should deal with anything under the hood. They should have the option to use, let's say, maybe a high processor cloud or a high compute cloud or a high I/O cloud or a high memory cloud, but at the end of the day, we don't want them to even think about the idea of a server or a load balancer or anything. The infrastructure and the Fabric engines, we think we should be using Fabric Engine because we should do the hard sort of acceleration and all that stuff behind the scenes, but we specialize in that. So we don't want them to worry about that.
So just two questions. One is, are there certain applications that RNIO is more, gets more value out of than other ones, or is it truly horizontal?
Yeah, it depends on when you ask me this. We started off by building a Swiss Army blade to solve lots of different problems, but we've begun to focus a lot on where we're having the biggest, so the customers are sort of paying the most money to use. And we're finding really web crawling is a huge need because web crawling takes sort of this massively parallelized kind of actions, and we're able to do that really easily. Image processing is another one because it's very compute heavy. And developers want to process an image through social data or like Instagram, for example. Processing takes a lot of servers, right? But they just want to write their application. They don't want to worry about all the stuff behind the scenes. So that's another one. Video encoding is another one. This product was actually built when Travis and I were collecting sensor data from millions of sensors out there. And we were storing raw data in SimpleDB at the time. And we had to do something with that data because the users wanted to see it. So we were running aggregation analysis constantly. We had hundreds of workers kind of processing that data as it came in. And every 5-10 minutes, then the users would be able to see an updated graph of this data that didn't make any sense before. So those are the big areas we're focusing on right now.
And then the if something breaks or it's not performing, does a developer or an app owner, how do they get visibility into kind of what's going on? Because that's usually the
Yeah, so one example is if you're crawling the web and you're hitting the Facebook API or the Twitter stream, and that API starts to rate limit you or your workers start failing for some reason or another, we can actually set up a custom notification so it'll alert them through PagerDuty or some other service. Or we're working on real-time logging so that you may have 10,000 workers running, but you've got a real sort of one stream of logging running, so you can kind of watch predictive analysis to see what's going on.
But how do they debug? Like how do they start?
Well, really it's just their code. I mean, it's just simple like code in any language that you want to use, so you can even run it locally. I mean, I'm a Ruby developer, so with Ruby, you just write one Ruby file and you run it. And if it works, then you just deploy it and you run it a million times, and you pass different parameters in. So you can debug and run it locally, and then we'll run it for you.
I guess follow-up question, in terms of like when you're in production and moving, if it's not, so there's coding, in the code itself there can be problems. What happens when there's problems with the infrastructure? And it's how do you, because that's a tough place for you to be in, right? Because you're not an infrastructure company, right? But it's part of your value proposition as, as a platform or whatever you're calling it is saying, hey, we're going to take care of the infrastructure. How do you handle that?
So we handle that because we are becoming the experts in the infrastructure, right? We run the software that orchestrates and manages the infrastructure so that our customers don't have to. When something does go wrong, then we're just really good about alerting our customers to notify. If we have to, we don't make any guarantees on when your task will run. We're not a real-time company, so you don't fire up a worker and it runs immediately and passes something to the browser. It could take 3 to 10 seconds to run, or it could take a minute if we're kind of under high load. But we just have to work those systems in to make that process smooth and efficient as we go. And every single person that uses the system, we learn from that, and we continue to improve the system so that ultimately what we build is going to be better than what anybody can build on their own because we've done it over and over again for customers.
Good answer.
What do you think the business model is going to look like as this thing grows?
So right now we charge a premium on top of their compute hours. So Amazon will charge you per hour, or you guys will charge per hour of compute time. We charge per second of your runtime. So if you have 1,000 workers running for 1 second, we charge you for 1,000 seconds worth of usage. And we do that because we can just optimize basically how many people we can put on one machine through like a specific LXC sandbox. And so our business model is we grow with you. So the more work you want to do, the more money we make on top. But ultimately, I think we see a lot more higher value services on top. For example, the private cloud example, to be able to deploy this entire system into a private cloud, we see a much higher sort of revenue model on that. Or services on top, like the real-time logging, the real-time notifications, things like that we can charge customers for. They would have built it themselves. They see serious value in it, and they pay us sort of on a monthly rate. So there's all sorts of things we can add on top.
And who do you see, from a competition perspective, who do you see out there right now?
Well, the main competition right now is developers doing it themselves. So they go and they take like a RabbitMQ and they stand it up, and then they go to the clouds and they provision some servers and they string it together. Because engineers a lot of the times want to sort of see and touch and feel and do things locally. We have to be sort of a trusted platform, right? And so, but we feel like we're in a great place because we're sort of skating to where the puck's going to be, and we're sort of transitioning our company to go where the developers we think they're going to go. And the biggest hurdle for us is getting developers to trust using a platform. Other competitors, it's hard to say. I mean, Amazon came out with simple workflow, but the feedback we've gotten is that I'm not going to say anything too much, but the feedback we've gotten is that they come to us eventually. And even so, we could plug into simple workflow or something like that because we could be like an endpoint for running workers off that workflow.
Cool.
You mentioned, I was just have a second here. You mentioned some of the use cases. Are those the same in the enterprise?
So for the most part, we are not working with enterprise because we don't have the resources to be able to do so, and we're finding the most traction in the startup and growth company. But we definitely see the same problems. Like I was talking to Jerome last night, and I said, well, developers don't want to deal with infrastructure. And he goes, well, I don't really want to deal with infrastructure either. Just because I work for HP in a large company doesn't mean I don't have the same problems. So I think there are the same problems that apply.
Sure.
We'll just kind of get there as we go.
Great. Thanks, Chad.
Cool.
Iron.io.
Thank you.